But when you choose to live into that artistic side, like you are with Mom in Process, and a lot of your listeners and a lot of moms out there, I think we know we have those urges and those intuitions and those desires. And when we choose to live into that, that's when you get up leveled, your family feels it and the world feels it.
Hey, sweet mama. Welcome back to another episode of Mom in Process. As always, I'm your host and creator, Amy Cawthron. Thank you so much for joining me today, for trusting me today, and spending a little bit of time with me today. I am, as always, very excited for you to meet this incredible guest that I have on this episode. Since it's a Thursday episode, it's an interview episode, and this sweet mama is one I've been anxiously waiting to introduce you to. We had a beautiful conversation about mama mindset because this is the owner of Mama Mindset. As you guys know, we have changed the name. The original name of this podcast in this community was Mama Mindset. It is now Mom in Process, which I am so grateful for and absolutely loving and feeling very touched, I guess, by the universe and a higher power that this entire situation has happened for a reason. And I invited Anik to come on the show and share with me her story of how she came to create Mama Mindset. And then obviously we have the conversation of how I created Mama Mindset, came to realize hers had already been created with the trademark, how I grew, how she grew. And now we're in this beautiful opportunity to collaborate and have a conversation around mindset and empowering women and what it means to be a healer as a mother. And Anik Crockroft is her name. And she comes to this space, this healing space, with actually a background in pediatric care, and as well as she's an athlete and these other incredible things. But what she has used is all of her experience to create a space for moms, create a space for women to heal and to be empowered and to be uplifted based on she uses her experience and her background. And she actually stepped away from her career as a pediatrician to empower moms, to empower women. And her and I have a beautiful conversation in this podcast. So I hope you find value in it. I hope it entertains you. I hope it energizes you, because this is a podcast that is going to make you feel good. This is a podcast that's going to make you feel so inspired and so empowered to lean into your truth, to lean into yourself as an individual and raise the future generation, raise the sweet babies that you have at home, and get to know Anik at the same time. Her and I just bounce like very parallel stories off of each other, which gives me goosebumps multiple times in this conversation. So grab a cozy beverage and join Anik and I in this beautiful conversational journey. Hi, Anik. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Hi, aloha. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so for my listeners, Anik is a super special guest. I'm incredibly grateful that she was able to come on today. And we've been kind of playing email tag a little bit because we're both super busy moms, and we finally made it happen. But Anik actually is the creator of Mama Mindset, dun, dun, dun. The beautiful woman, the super amazing woman that I didn't intentionally, but ended up borrowing. Can I use the word borrowed? The
Absolutely.
name temporarily until I realized that it was trademarked. And obviously I stepped down from that. And now we've rebranded to Mom in Process, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as we have the conversation on how you came to create Mama Mindset. But welcome, Anik. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. I'm so glad to be here. And I look at that so much. I love the word serendipitous. It's one of my favorite words in life. And I'm grateful for the serendipity Mama Mindset, that is the glue that was able to introduce us and our life paths crossed, because it was obviously meant to be. So grateful that was the way you entered the world of serving moms through your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the way that we were able to meet. So
Mhm.
thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. True story, honest story. When I hired an attorney, like, can I move forward with this? I mean, it's trademark because I didn't know anything about trademarking, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble, but I don't want to step on toes. So like, how does this work? And I said, everything that she's creating, she really looks like, I mean, I would not be shocked if she creates her own podcast, and we can talk about that later too. But I was like, I just think that this is setting me up anyway. So I couldn't answer all those questions, and I hired an attorney. And at the end of it, we decided that I needed to change the name, and that was totally fine. I mean, I had my moment of like, well, what am I going to do? And then it was
Of
fine.
course.
But the funny thing is, he was like, well, I mean, you could, because I said, well, should I reach out to her? Because I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay and like copacetic and like, not really, I didn't feel like I needed to like formally apologize, but I just want to be like, hey, I started this, but I am rebranding, just so you know, and it's pivoting. And he's like, well, you can, but I mean, he wasn't like super convinced that that was a good idea. And I'm like, no, I've got this. She's a mom. It's
Yes.
okay. She's in Hawaii. I mean, she's not
Yes.
going to be like an angry person. I just know it. Like, I just had this vibe that I had this feeling that I could not push out, that I had to reach out to you, and I just had to like meet you and talk to you about this. And I told him, I was like, you know what, but I could have her on the podcast and bring, awareness to her and what she's doing with her business. And he was like, I mean, you can try it. And I was like, I got this. I bet she's awesome. Turns
You
out I
got
was
this.
right.
Yes. I love that you did that, because I have that same mentality, and I view it as an opportunity that we get to support each other. And yeah,
Yeah.
truthfully, I can't remember when along the timeline, but I think we're kind of made of a similar cloth, just even in the 20 minutes of talking.
Mhm.
But I think I had seen maybe your Instagram or something. And because yeah, I think at some point I went to put, to look for Mama Mindset for just like a business part of my Instagram.
Mhm.
And I saw it and I was like, oh, cool. This mom's doing a podcast. It's called Mama Mindset Podcast. And the thought didn't even cross my mind. It's not really a legalistic, and so it didn't really even cross my mind to contact you about that or be like, oh, that I was just kind of like sending out silent vibes. Oh, wow, she's got an existing podcast. Looks like it's going great. And that's how I surfed that when
Mhm.
I found that out. I also have a fabulous lawyer who helped me along the process. She's a soccer teammate from college. I played soccer in college at Miami. And so, uh, we ran many a fitness test together. And then when
Mhm.
I had this idea, and I can actually give you backstory if you want on my journey with the
Yes,
trademarking process.
please.
So
Yeah.
and I'm sure our stories will come out more and more, but for your listeners, that I'm also a fellow mama and a pediatrician as well. And so when I kind of leaned more into like the artistic side of me, I've spent the last couple decades, in the medical books and in med school and doing all those things, which have been wonderful and fulfilling and great. And I definitely claim all of them. But when I started to kind of lean more into the artistic side of me and how I wanted to serve moms, because I've always felt this connection with moms, whether it's in the hospital or in my office, and especially new moms and postpartum moms, which
Mhm.
postpartum is forever. I totally believe that. I'm sure you
Mhm.
can attest to that with your all the way from 2 to
Mhm.
almost 8-year-old. Just those moments, the sacred moments of meeting with moms in the clinical setting and them just kind of pouring their heart out to me. And I just knew that that was where the magic in me lies as a healer, beyond just a
Mhm.
physician and a mom. That was just where I felt like that was my gift in life. And that's where I'm supposed to be and meet people. And so it just became a little bit harder and harder in clinical medicine to pivot moms away from these awesome moments and conversations that we're having, because I had, so many other patients to see.
Right. Right.
And so I just kept leaning more and more into that purpose and getting braver and braver about how was I going to craft this. And just from somebody who had, it all kind of laid out, let's med school, residency and fellowship. And then the career after that, choosing to pivot, I think took a lot of courage. And I'm sure your story is similar with starting your podcast. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to pursue a dream. And I think and believe that sometimes it takes even more courage to pivot away from it when it's maybe not serving you anymore, or when you feel that conviction that you're meant to serve in another way. And so that's kind of how I came to land upon, in my own experience as a mother, of course, too, and getting that street cred, in addition to just being a pediatrician. When you become a mama yourself, I think you gain a lot of street cred, right?
Yes.
And so I just felt that I could take everything I knew as a physician and all of that momentum and who I am just as a human and create this space. So I initially thought of the term momatrician because for me, that made a lot of sense, like a mom and a pediatrician.
Oh yeah.
And I have this belief that every mom, in her is the pediatrician in her own home. You are the one with your 3 daughters, like mending the bruised emotions and knees like all day long, and you know them best. And that was my favorite thing clinically, is always just saying and invalidating the mom, like, you are the expert in your own child. What do you think is going on? And I just always had a lot of productive dialogue and empowering moments in that way. And so momatrician came to mind for me just because it was kind of a blending of who I was at that exact time and how I viewed moms. So I pursued that trademark initially, and the initial searches like looked pretty positive for that. And then I remember I went to Oahu and I took sports med boards because I did my fellowship in that. And I think my son was maybe a year old. And I came home and to this email from my attorney, and she said, I've never seen this before in my career, but maybe, I can't remember the exact time, but it was 1 to 2 weeks before a fellow mom and also pediatrician in Texas who's doing phenomenal work. And I hope to meet her one day. She's doing work empowering from a mental health perspective, teens, it looks like, filed for something called the momatrician. And so it was very similar.
Yes.
And, immediately hearing that, I'm kind of like, I'm very much into supporting colleagues and fellow moms, similar to how you reacted. So I was kind of like, okay, so should I just back down or pivot? Because it sounds like, from a timeline perspective, she had filed, plus she's doing great work. I want to support that. But I also had my moment thinking, okay, I've put all this momentum and energy toward this, and you have to then sit with that for a moment and say, will I invite this energy? And that is, okay, you have the option to pivot here. And will you let that in? And I think that goes and can apply to all moms at different points of adversity in our life. If we can truly believe that all things are working out for our highest good, and what can come from that.
Absolutely.
So from there, I started just kind of settling in that energy and trusting it and digging deep into what I wanted for this and how I wanted to serve, and just surrendering, I think, was a big thing for me. And that's been a huge catalyst in my time forming mama mindset, is just being okay not having all the answers, as a physician and like a researcher and a clinician, all of those things, all those data points, which are great. This is totally different season for me. So before med school, I did mental health counseling master's. So that kind of plays into a lot of, I think, my platform and just the way that I approach like interactions and just connecting and empathetically with moms. So mama mindset just came to me, and I was like, there's no way that's going to be available because it seems a little bit too comprehensive. But I asked, and she's like, no, I think that's a good one, and we can pursue that. And so I was like, wow, similar to with you and Mom in Process, I thought this actually, I think and feel, and as time went on, was more of a home for me and a place to land and where I was always meant to be. And when I could give up a little bit of the struggle and, that we all feel, and get off the struggle bus and say, this was a cool opportunity. It was meant to happen. And I can give my aloha to the amazing momatrician doing her work in Texas and all the things that she's doing. And then obviously Mama Mindset led me to meeting you as well. And it was a long process because, different things go on in the trademark world, and probably just all the other things in our current climate. But when it finally came through, I think close to the holidays this past year. So that was exciting.
That is, oh my gosh, that is like such a parallel story to what mine was.
Yes. And I know I couldn't wait to share it with you because it wasn't like fully smooth for me either, so I truly, that's why I'm so excited for you with Mom in Process, because I can see your energy. Just so vibrant, like, no, this is where you're meant to be. This is where you're meant to land. Yes. And Mama Mindset was a stop along your path. And it was a great stop because now we have this bond going forward and ability to
Yeah.
support each other. So
Yeah. And I just have to say, I love the collaboration in the women that I've met on this journey and the other mothers that I've met. I mean, I come and I've shared this on the podcast here. I come from a pretty competitive background with like competitive high school sports. And, I'm typically more of a competitive person anyways. So to be able to like lean into these relationships with other women and build other women up and, my sweet mama listeners. And this is one of those journeys that is 100% about giving and just providing for the other people I've had on the podcast as much as possible, providing value, for those
Mhm.
other relationships I've built in that way, but also just the mama listeners in the community that I'm building. It's all about just pouring into other women when
Yes.
typically I've really been like more, and I have a really close knit group of girlfriends, but that outside of that, like I've always been very competitive. And so this has been like the most transforming experience for me to just be able to collaborate with these amazing, incredible, brilliant women in all over the world. I mean, I've met with these women all over
Yes.
the world, and it's so amazing. So to like have mama mindset, like there's something about that like brought us together too.
Uh-huh.
And my journey was so parallel to yours, like I was saying. And I I felt almost when I heard the news, that I wasn't going to be able to move forward with mama mindset. And I could have, honestly, Anik, like I could have, but it wouldn't have served you and it wouldn't have served me. And then we would have come together in like I just felt like that's like a negative energy that I didn't want to come together in. If we're going to come together, like I want to like chat with you or, maybe like someday we'll come and meet you and like enjoy a glass
Yeah.
of wine or, I wanted it to be like this really positive thing. And so I left the attorney's office and I didn't have my children with me. It was just Brad and I. And I was like, I'm not going to allow myself to be beaten down by this. I'm not going to allow myself to cry. I allowed myself like a 10-second pity party, like this
Oh,
sucks. I'm upset, and then from there, I was like, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to figure it out tonight. So we went to dinner. I called my parents and I asked for a little bit more time if they could watch the kids for a little bit longer. And we went to dinner. And I just remember like writing down words and like pouring over this because I was already in the zone. I was already
yes.
in the mindset of like, I'm going to figure this out because I was afraid if I didn't figure it out, I guess maybe that's where we were a little bit different is I was like, okay, I'm figuring this out right now because I was afraid that the busyness of life and my
Mhm.
daughters was going to become more of a priority than me finding the solution and really taking that time to go deep into myself and into my mind to find out what am I trying to say? What am I trying to do here? How does this really articulate the idea of this community and the mindset behind it? And the mindset wasn't like mama mindset. The mindset ended up being that we are all a mom in process, all of us. And so and I said it, and then Brad was like, well, and he like had given me a couple of other ideas. We're just like throwing out words, brainstorming. And I went back and I was like, no, I said mom in process. I said, but we have to get the punctuation right because it's not mom in process. It's not like, I had to have the punctuation in there to really articulate the fluid idea, this fluid identity that we're always in process. It's never ending. So I actually I had a friend, she's brilliant. And so I asked her, I was like, this is kind of how I want to do the punctuation. And so she ended up like confirming and giving me an idea too. But yeah, there's something about mama mindset though that's so powerful that brought us together. And I
Yes.
love that we had such parallel stories in that. So Anik, at what point when did you switch it? And then how did you start developing this new idea? And when all of this was happening, let me back up a little bit. Did you step away from your practice or were you kind of doing these parallel together? Were you kind of doing them both at the same time?
That's a great question. I had completed, I had stepped away clinically for a little while and had my son.
Mm-hmm.
And, I also resonated a lot with you talking about competitive background. I grew up and competitive background in soccer and all through college. And just, I think, competitive with myself. Like, okay, if I'm going to set off on this journey and with medicine, and I can tell with your career before you pivoted into the entrepreneurial space that you're now in with Mom in Process via Mama Mindset, I can resonate with that a lot. So I had my son Cruz, and then I was postpartum, and I had kind of put this clock on myself, like, well, you only get, whatever it is, like a limiting belief, story I held onto, like, you're after these 12 weeks, like, I hope you enjoy it, because it's going to be time to take that plunge back into, clinical medicine and everything. With my daughter, I was still in residency. So I can still remember the raw emotions around that. I mean, I loved it. Pediatrics is so much fun, but my emotions were everywhere. I'm big on validating them all now, having been through everything. She was like 11 weeks old, and I had to go back to 90-hour work weeks, and 28-hour calls in the hospital. I literally remember I put her down next to me, doing tummy time on this cute little swaddle we got. And I was playing her The Little Mermaid on the piano. And I was just like silent tears just falling down. Like I just did not know how I was going to do, how I was going to do it. Like, how was I going to remedy being a mom and going and taking care of other people's babies and doing what I felt called to do at the same time. But we do as moms, right? I've figured it out, and mostly by just leaning into our inner strength and that wellspring of, amazing amounts of magnetism and love that flow through our bodies as moms. So with Cruz, I had this little clock that was like, well, this is about to expire, so I hope you're having fun. And I started to just really get uncomfortable with that. And I've now learned, like, that discomfort is so important for me to lean into and tune into, rather than just brush it off, because it's usually like it's a guide. It's a invitation to pivot. It was just foreign to me, because in the former way I had done things, it was just, no, you're going to persevere through this. And I did a lot of wonderful things with that mentality, but this mindset was different. It was more about surrendering and submitting and believing that, I could build the life that I dreamed of right now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, because those were other limiting beliefs I held on to. Things like, well, when you pay off your student loans, then you can do what you want, or whatever it was. There were various versions of stories like that I told myself. And I think a lot of moms, and probably your listeners, can resonate with. We all have stories that we carry around, but I just started unloading that purse. Like, nope, I don't need that. And so, so all these great clinical opportunities came up, on island in Maui and different in Hawaii. And I learned to say no, because I felt it in my intuition. And I'm big on that. I call it mama tuition. I think that's the sixth sense that we have as moms and as women and as visionaries. Cause I think we're all in our genius zone when we lean into that. And so I started turning down perfectly good opportunities, because I just knew that they weren't aligned with where I wanted to go anymore. And as I was just allowing more and more of that visionary in myself to emerge, and that strength in me that's always been there, that's where Mama Mindset first via the Momatrician came out. And so I started evolving my website and writing, because I've always loved writing. It's always been a medium for me to just as a catharsis, in a way that I connect with people. And I had just been writing more and reading things for fun again, instead of just medical texts and journals.
Right. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And so I was like, this is so fun. I was like getting books from the library again. And, I kind of playfully referred to myself as Anik the Geek in high school, and just reading all this cool stuff. And don't get me wrong, I still love reading medical things, but I thought I can bring this energy of who I am, all these stops along the way, this serendipity coming back. It's all for a reason. Like, it's all, and we live in this cool day and age where moms can, like you and me, we can use our gifts and our skills and our talents and the combination, I think, of our experience and our expertise in various areas and serve, moms. Yes. And I just think I resonate with what you said before too. It's so expansive, this place of giving, and just knowing that the more moms that are living in a raw and true and authentic way into their genius zone, into what they want to do right now, and pushing through the fear that challenges us to do those things, the more we can just support and get around that, the better this world is. And so that's where mama mindset lands, is that in my experience as a mom, as a pediatrician, I know that children thrive when their moms are doing things that they're not putting themselves on the back burner, but they're leading by example now, and they're living into those, whatever creative desires have been, I think, divinely dropped into their heart. And so it started with me, and I knew that this momentum was building, and it was kind of something I kept, to myself at first, and I journaled about, and I just knew that it was time to live into that vulnerability. That vulnerability was my new currency for it. And sometimes in medicine, it's a beautiful field, and we're expected to be, and we want to be, obviously, very poised and full of expertise to put people at ease and to help and to heal. And so it's kind of new territory for me to lean into all the vulnerability. But I also knew that that was my way forward. And so that's where Mama Mindset was born, was just me choosing to live into my own vulnerability as a mom, as a mom in process, and to honor all that journey that had come and offer that. I'm all for just, if any mom, giving her the knowledge, because she is the healer in her own home. So that's where it came. And so clinically, I wasn't active since my son was born, and I chose, like, with more and more power as time went on, to, decline with Aloha those opportunities that came, and to, instead of just saying, oh, that's a hobby. And I think that's something that moms can fall into too. Well, I can't make that into a source of revenue or into a full, whatever it is, right? We tend to minimize our talents and our natural gifts, but that's where our true power is, right? It's just living, coming on right here, right now with you on a Sunday night, while our families are doing their thing, and we're just here in our genius zones talking, and this gets to be fun, and it gets to be alive and powerful. And that's where I landed, and where I am now, and the direction that we're moving.
I love that. I just got goosebumps when you said that, by the way. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so cool. So I have a question for you. One of the things that you were saying that I want to ask with limiting beliefs, do you think one of the things that was holding you back, we talked about you were mentioning about limiting beliefs, but do you think some of that was that you had held on to your educational background in which you were as a pediatrician? Do you think that was part of your identity? Do you think maybe some of that was a little bit hesitated, or you weren't quite sure, or whatever, because that was who you were, like that was who you had decided was going to be your identity? And so now it's like, where do you go from there? Am I okay shifting my identity? Do you think that was like a little bit as well?
Yes, I think limiting beliefs are so powerful. And I think we get very comfortable in the labels and identities that we have, right? And pediatrician is a good one. Like, it's a well-accepted one, and you can land in it and do a lot of great things there. But yes, I do think that as a reformed people pleaser, I think I will be for the rest of my life a reformed people pleaser. And I mean that in the most benevolent way. I love connecting with people, but I've realized that in that venture of people pleasing, you can lose yourself in that loyalty to who you are at your core. And so, yes, I had a lot of reservations pivoting initially, because so eager to, in the traditional sense, like fulfill my destiny in medicine, or that I had perceived, like, okay, this long career as a pediatrician. And I specialized even further after my, initial residency in sports medicine. And moms are my favorite athletes. So that's fun. I'm sure we can talk more about all the things with that. And I'm big into like pelvic floor therapy and all kinds of the ways that our bodies are just so magnificent. But yes, so I think those limiting beliefs were powerful for me, and were important for me to spend time unpacking and addressing, and just really looking at those and learning how to honor them and say, can I claim this? Like, claim this, Anik, you did this, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's wonderful. And but it doesn't have to be your path. You choose. And I'm big on choice. I've really dropped the language around should and need to, because I find those to be so disempowering. And I think we slip into those a lot in our, the shoulding storm on ourselves. Right.
Yes.
And just into a very getting quiet and getting still and saying, I choose this, I will do this. I choose this. I get to, and that uplifting energy, I get to write my story from here and continue to heal. And what the oath that I took, to do no harm, and to speak life and love into people, I still get to do that. And I think giving myself the permission to take my stethoscope in a new direction and place it on the mama's heart and do it in a way that felt authentic to me took time, but it was such a beautiful journey to give myself that permission. And no one could do that except for me. And it did take time for me to unpack those limiting beliefs and stories that I had held for a long time, to arrive at that place and to really, find that freedom and that, sense of just purpose and fulfillment and saying, I get to it. This gets to be fun and
it's okay. And
I'm safe to do this. Yeah. It's okay.
Yes.
It's not like I had all these fears around, but I'm going to be, is this kind of like this is going against the grain and I don't want to disappoint like mentors and people. And honestly, as we all learn, when we lean into those things, those people were supportive of me pursuing my passion. But regardless, when we live into our zone of genius, which I believe in those concepts, like the zone of excellence, you probably heard in the zone of genius, we can do a lot of great work in our zones of excellence and things that we're good at. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you choose to live into that artistic side, like you are with Mom in Process, and a lot of your listeners and a lot of moms out there, I think we know we have those urges and those intuitions and those desires. And when we choose to live into that, that's when you get up leveled, your family feels it and the world feels it.
Yes.
And so to answer your question in a long but fun way, yes, those were things I had to meet head on and look at and get uncomfortable with and grow from, and now I know so much, I feel so much more expansive energy having had the patience with myself and the reverence, I think, to really treat myself in such a loving way and say, what have you been holding yourself to? Like, what stories have you been carrying around and what can you release in order to let yourself move forward?
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. And I want to dive into that just a little bit deeper, because when I first of all, I fully 100% believe that by leaning into that and saying no to your, I don't want to say no to your initial identity, but one of the things that I figured out was that when I left my career in human resources and I had a business degree and, I was like, now who am I? Like, I knew that this felt right. Like, it felt like I needed to take care of my daughter. And I went back to work for a little while and it wasn't serving me. I didn't go back as long as you did. I went back after we had our first for 3-4 months and it was just it wasn't serving us. Like, the daycare was raising her. And I was like, I didn't know what my life was supposed to look like, but I knew it didn't feel right. And that was the first start down that path for me of following something that really felt good in mothering and growing into myself. So from there, then becoming a full-time mom, then I didn't know what my identity was, right? I didn't know who I was within that. Like, how do I now find myself or create myself? What I've learned now is you don't necessarily find yourself. You actually have to take action steps to kind of create yourself. You create this, this, I don't want to say new you, but through all of your life experience and everything, it takes action to pursue that. And then it ends up organically just becoming this new you. And I kind of always refer it back to the very hungry caterpillar of moms, turning into this beautiful butterfly. Like, you blossomed, you've turned from the caterpillar into the butterfly. But it took me a few years, but once I did that, it was this beautiful, moment, and it didn't happen all at once. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is some of the moms that I've talked to lately are struggling with going back to work, like part-time even. But this is my identity. I'm a full-time mom. And even me personally, like, getting totally honest and vulnerable here. How do I consider myself a full-time mom if I'm also a podcaster? Can I be both? Is that okay? Well, who determines what's okay? Why do I have to be a podcaster? Why do I have to be a stay-at-home mom? Why do I have to be one thing or the other with a label on it? And then when I start to ask myself these questions and I start diving deep, again, like the competitive side of me comes out and I'm like, oh, to heck with that. Like I can be whatever I want to be and I can call myself whatever I want to call myself. That's like my determined side. You're going to tell me I can't be a stay-at-home mom and a podcaster and a gardener and all these things. Like I'm going to do it all and I'm going
to claim it all.
Yeah. And so, but I have heard I've had women having these conversations of like, sort of this identity crisis moment of, well, I want to go back to work part-time, or I want to do this a little bit, or I want to pursue something else on the side. And I'm like, it's fine. Like you don't have to be one or the other. Like you can do both as long as it's serving you, as long as it feels good, as long as you feel like you can still serve your family in the way you want to serve your family, then try it. And what's the worst that's going to happen is you're not going to enjoy it. So then, step back out of it. But I'm all about trying, pursue it. If something is calling you to do that, if something is pulling you to do that, try it and see how it goes and let that resonate with you for a little while. And if there's a bad vibe in there, or if it's not, working with your family, then pull back a little bit and reevaluate and see where you go next. And I always tell moms too, I've had just a couple of people ask me about this, but I'm really honest on the podcast saying like almost all of the stay-at-home moms that I know or I've met, like they consider themselves a full-time mom. They almost always have something that they're pursuing on the side, generating a little bit of income, so they're still a stay-at-home mom, they're still a full-time mom, but they're also pursuing other interests. I just talked to one of my beautiful friends and I'm not sure actually when the podcast comes out. So this is a little bit tough to talk about because I just talked to her the other day, but she has 8 beautiful children. And between her and her husband, they run 3 businesses and she's a homeschool mama. And so she's a full-time mom, right? She considers herself a stay-at-home mom, but she's also an entrepreneur. She's also a homeschooler. She's also an incredible baker. I mean, they bake and she cans and they do all of these. She's also brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And so she does all these things. And I'm like, the other moms that I talk to, I'm like, it's okay. It's okay if you want to go back to work for a little bit or pursue something. It's okay if you want to start a podcast. It's okay if you want to serve other moms, all of that is totally okay. So I just wanted to, I wanted to expand on that and say, it's interesting because as previously working moms, stepping away from that working mom role to being a full-time mom and then stepping back into the entrepreneurial game as a mompreneur, I guess, if you want to call it that, like that is an identity. There's an identity shift that happens there too. And there's fear in all of it. So it goes back to this mom in process idea is like, it's always going to shift and it's okay. You don't have to be fluid. One thing forever. Yes. So I love that you went through a very similar process.
I think that we will find ourselves all on some of these similar threads. I had so many great thoughts, even just hearing in this fun live chat that we're having. I really believe that it comes back to that permission from ourselves that we all, as moms and as women, we tend to seek, and we're societally patterned from a young age. You go to college, if you choose to go to college and you're being asked like, what's your major? And so you kind of understand this patterning and this processing of how, you're going into accounting. Okay. You're going into medicine, and then you pursue these jobs in these fields, and none of that's bad or wrong, but I think it's important that we look at how much power we're allowing that to take hold in our souls and upon our identity. And I feel that the true freedom lies for women, for visionaries, to give permission to ourselves to define who we are and to know, yes, that it's a fluid identity. And I feel that dichotomy is really shifting between the working mom and the staying-at-home mom. But both of those moms are visionaries and amazing. And I think we're getting better and more awoke, more alive about that, and supporting each other and knowing, like that example of your mom with 8 children with 3 businesses, that we're oftentimes doing so many things that we may maybe minimize or don't even claim or don't even realize the impact that we're making. And so I think it's about going back. I got excited hearing your journey. I'm sure now you think those versions of Amy, that Amy that went back to work when your first daughter was born, she knew like that there was more for her, and you listened to that of intuition in that voice. And I think it's important that all moms claim those versions of herself. Cause I can remember that version of me that started to have the bravery to have conversations with JD, my husband, saying, you've been extremely supportive in this long and arduous journey of medical school and residency. That has been, a beautiful journey as well. And then floating that idea for the first time, I'm actually considering pivoting away.
That's so much bigger than mine, by the way.
I can remember we had this really cool park by our house in Honolulu. We used to walk to the beach for sunsets. And I remember getting up the courage, not that I was nervous to tell him, more that I was nervous to tell it out into the world, like just, let it out of what had been building, that vulnerability, like, am I even really considering this? And, he was extremely receptive to that. And I think, and I can tell you that those are growing moments in our interpersonal relationships when oftentimes we tend as women to hold these things in because we're not sure how they're going to be perceived. And I think we try things on, like you were saying, some of the moms that have, come to you lately, we'll try things on for size, but we're still a little bit too scared to fully claim it. We'll say something like, well, I kind of want to do this or that. Or when I have conversations with mom friends in my life or women that I, have met that I'm excited to empower, we put out these little feelers just to see how they'll be received, because we're still afraid of the rejection. And that's a normal and natural part of the human experience. But when you can say and fully get to the part where you say, I am safe, like we're safe to fail forward. If like in that email you sent me even about, mama mindset, like there is no failing. What if you could never fail again? How it's such a freeing and safe thing to say. What if there was no failure? What if it was just pivoting? And when you think about the way that you want as moms to show our children, we want them to try things. Like I was just telling my daughter tonight, cause we were making oatmeal cookies earlier and I told her to put in, I think, like a quarter cup of chocolate chips. And I went to wash my son's hand and I came back and there was like a cup of chocolate chips, or it was just like a copious amount. We had some very chocolatey oatmeal cookies, but like we want you to make mistakes. And as a soccer coach, and when I got to coach after college, something that I had always craved, I think as a player, was a safe space for a coach to say, it's okay to make a mistake. And so I would always tell my players, like, I want you to make mistakes. What I'm looking for is how your character responds to that. Like, what do you do after, and that's, so I think for moms and women, just giving ourselves that permission, that internal locus, that it doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't truly, it's hard to repattern that, but it doesn't matter what your identity is perceived as, or who you are as a working mom or a staying at home mom or any of that. It's just you giving the permission to say, it's fluid. It might be changing, but I'm living into the desires and dreams that were divinely dropped into me. And because I'm doing that, I'm so alive right now, and I may not have it all figured out, but that's how I've come into this place and met you. And that's how you've been able to serve so many mamas through your podcast, just having that bravery and that vulnerability to say, I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to make time. I'm going to create time in my day to come and meet moms, and that's what we're doing now. And so I think I'm really big into that concept too. Our future selves are always beckoning us on. And then there's previous versions of ourselves where we can look back and say, have so much gratitude. I'm so thankful for that version of Anik that in that grassy field and sunset one day just started launching into, I think that this could be what our future looks like. And then, we ended up moving to Maui, and this whole chapter has evolved in our life that wouldn't have been had I had the, not had the courage to pivot that way. And I'm sure I could be working a clinical job and be having fun doing that, but it wouldn't be as expansive as what I'm doing right now, and something that only I can bring into the world. Just like there's no one else that could create and deliver Mom in Process. No one else in this world was, I don't know if you've ever read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, but it's a great book. And it's kind of an idea about, she's the Eat, Pray, Love. She has this other book about Big Magic.
Okay.
Yeah. And the concept is just that ideas kind of, I don't want to say indoctrinated, but ideas find different people. Like a host, for example, Mom in Process found you, and you had the bravery to say, I'm doing it, and for me, it's Mama Mindset. And every single mom, every single listener you have, every single woman in this world has something unique that only she can bring forth into the world, similar to the babies that she, nurtured. And I believe so strongly in that. and it can never be remade and done by someone else in another way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about a competition. And I love that you leaned into that energy, and I have too. It's not about like, oh my gosh, well, is there room for this? Because that's the competitive side of us from a business, and,
Yes.
and those voices will come in, but it's also always an opportunity to say, it's not about that. The more moms, you and me and anyone else that's out there serving, the better this world is being. And the more we get to pour into each other and uplift each other. It's like, you've probably run road races. I love that energy where you just feel everybody cheering each other on. And we have that ability as moms in a global initiative, such as Mama Mindset and Mom in Process and all the other ones out there that we hopefully will get to know. And even if a mom doesn't have a formal podcast, just her influence in her sphere of the world.
Yes.
We get to choose to say yes to that, and to fully and authentically support her, and to not have to have conversations around, are you a stay-at-home mom or this mom? And we get to go beyond that.
Yes.
And I hope more and more that we invite ourselves into that, because I know we're all tired of that narrative. It doesn't serve us. It's similar to that narrative of like bouncing back. That narrative, I'm just like so over it. And we're not bouncing back, we're moving forward. And I think, and I hope we're into a new place in the world today where it's not about, do you work or do you not work? It's just not really a productive conversation. It doesn't really bring a lot of joy to any mom if you really ask her.
Right.
I know I don't really enjoy it answering it or asking it. So hopefully we can all just choose to.
I had to ask that because I needed to know, like, who are my audience? Are they working out of the home, or are they in the home? Like, I needed to do like a survey.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense demographically.
I hated asking the question because I'm like, I felt like I needed to preface it. P.S. I don't care either way. I just need to know the demographics of it. But it was it felt so wrong to like slap a label on it. Are you a stay-at-home mom? Or are you a working mom? I'm like, because we're all working moms, even if we're a full-time mom.
Yeah.
It's just, some of us get paid and some of us don't. And that's all okay.
Some of us clock in and some of us don't ever clock out, so it's such a freeing space. And I think it's so life-giving for us to just come and listen to other moms' stories, meet them where they are. I've started asking people, what do you love, instead of what do you do? And just seeing their response is kind of cool. Cause that's just a question, like an elevator talk, like, what do you do? And, people just launch into their, answer that they've given 1,000 times. And I fell into this too. People were like, okay, well, what's next for you? And for a while before I was brave enough to really formulate and explain what Mama Mindset was and what my vision was for it, I had some version of, well, yeah, I've, got this hospital offer, it was my little elevator answer I had for people. But I think that it's just so fun getting to do this, and for all moms to invite themselves in, but no one can do it except for yourself. You have to give yourself that permission. That is, I am who I am. And just because you were born, that's enough, like you're enough exactly as you are. And we're so good at minimizing ourselves and our gifts and our abilities and that genius zone that has nothing to do with even like higher education or what you've accrued, but just you, like as a raw human and what gifts you bring. Not to, not give credibility to all those expertise and everything, but just I'm big onto that now. Like whoever you are as a person, that's enough. And
and one of the things that I love to talk about on the podcast too, that I always like, I continue to reiterate the fact that you are who you are serves, if you can really lean into that, it serves not only your family, but, and you kind of touched on this, and I just want to expand on that a little bit, but it not only serves your family, but it also serves the community. Like you had mentioned, like in your sphere, in your space, in your bubble, like that cascades into such a beautiful, diverse community if we can all lean into that. Like you and I chatted about homeschooling a little bit earlier before we started recording. And one of the things that I absolutely love is that we get to, and we don't have to dive into the homeschool conversation, but this all goes into that. Like as a stay-at-home mom, as a full-time mom, a mom at home, and where you're not clocking in and out on somebody else's schedule, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever that looks like for you, you have this incredible ability to create, to give, to be, to lean into who you are, and then allow that to go into your family. And then from there, it goes into the community. And it's just this ripple effect that happens to create this diverse community. And we live in an era, unfortunately, right now, that I think that so many people are really stuck in this identity of this box of what they should be, and what, the society narrative, the narrative of societal pressures and all of that says that we should be, with the, even like this, like you already talked about it, the job title with the paycheck and celebrating that. But if you can actually lean into that true calling and that true essence of yourself, then it helps everyone so much better. It serves everybody so much better than if you were to continue doing pediatrics, which is incredible that you pursued that. But what you're able to do right now by leaning into this space is bettering. So I really, really feel like, and this is maybe just my opinion, but I feel like the long-term effects of that are so much greater, that you're still a healer, but you're healing in a much different way that is going to continue to expand. And I think that by you healing a mom can be a better mother, and she can help raise that next generation, and then it sets the next generation up for better success. I mean, we hope, that's the goal. And then
Yes.
it just continues to cascade.
Yes.
And I don't mean to minimize pediatrics, but what I'm hearing from you, it's like, yeah, we'll fix a problem. I mean, it could go really, really heavy. Like, okay, we saved a life today.
Yeah.
We stitched up a wound, and then,
Mhm.
and that's incredible. But to touch a mom's soul and her essence, and to heal her and empower her, she then helps her children, and her children understand this other idea of resilience, or really leaning into themselves as well, because they see their mother leaning into who she is, and they want to lean into who they are, and they go out and have children and they lean into who they are. And like,
Yes.
the ripple effect of all of that just is so much more, in my opinion, so much more expansive than what you would have leaned into as a pediatrician. And what I started out, I loved my career in human resources. I wanted to help people. I wanted to
Mhm.
help
Mhm.
people in their jobs and to create expansiveness. I didn't really
Mhm.
articulate it in that way at the time, but I just wanted to help. And I wanted people to love their jobs and love their
Mhm.
careers. And I was so limited in that.
Mhm.
And then when I became a mom and I went through all the struggles of this, I'm like, I just want to help another mom by hugging her and talking to her and sharing all of the shitty stories that I had when I
Yeah.
was trying to figure this all out. And I didn't know how to be a stay-at-home mom
Mhm.
because it's
Mhm.
so challenging. And then what I've realized is now me being home and taking on that, is it's allowing my children to really, I hope what I see, at least what I'm witnessing, is them being who they are and
Mhm.
exploring the things that they want to explore, especially as we're home educating. And then from there, my goal is for them to be these incredibly unique individuals and go into the community and create this beautiful, diverse community of all of these different experiences and all of these different approaches and backgrounds. And that's one of the things that we can embrace as stay-at-home moms, as full-time mothers, is you have this opportunity to really do some of that internal work and then see, okay, I'm going to pursue this because I'm interested in it. And I'm going to pursue that because I'm interested in it. And then I'm going to teach my children how to do that. And so, Anik, your family is going to look different than my family, because I have and my husband, very business mindset about things. So even like I approach home management is like almost like a business, like a career, and so you approach it from a pediatrician standpoint, and even
Mhm.
like a sports background and all of that, like that's
Mhm.
just different. And so your kids are going to show my kids something, and my kids are going to show your kids something, and it's just like this beautiful
Yes.
collaboration of growth.
Yes.
So I think it's so beautiful that you were touching on that too. And I just wanted to expand on it a little bit from like my perspective and what I've seen in my background too.
No, I value your perspective so much. And I thank you. Thank you for that, because I could feel the energetic exchange, and that's what it's all about. Yes. I fully think medicine is an art form, and I love and send so much aloha and energy to all the colleagues working in medicine. But yeah, for me, I was able to claim that not only is it okay, but it was a growing conviction, to pivot and say, I'm not meant to serve in this space. This has been a stepping stone for me. I'm grateful for it. This is my space. And kind of similar to you with your career, you took all those tools and all of what makes you great and successful. I like to define, I think we can all
absolutely
lean into that being a little bit different for everybody. Yeah. And you had the bravery to go outside of it. And I think that's been everything for me. That's been such I felt that magnetism toward saying, I know the way. Why not me? Why can't I create this? When we start to play with that energy and that curiosity, that inner child in us that, takes down the barriers, we watch our children all the time. We marvel at them solve solutions, and they don't really consider all the other outside influences and things that we allow to bog us down as women, and I'm big on that. And I can tell you're big on that too. Just learning to release the mom shame, the mom guilt, the judgment, the compare shots that we all take that are just really, at the end of the day, they take away from our energy and they're a distraction for our true purpose and our joy, And so it takes a while, but it's learning to recognize those, because none of us are immune to those. Like we never will be, but cultivating that awareness that it's coming on, whether you're scrolling social media and it's not serving you or whatever it is, it's just cultivating that awareness as a mom. It's so powerful to catch that emotion and then learn to protect your own energy, in whatever way that looks for you. But I think, and I'm so big on that, and I know you are too, of learning to protect your energy so that you can give it to yourself, and you can have this radical compassion for yourself with that then spills into your family and the way that you are present and joyful with your kids, or you're owning your moments of struggle bus, which is fine too. And I find a lot of humor in that, because we all have like a lot of struggle bus moments. Right. But now I'm like, okay, Amy's right in the front seat. We can honk the horn together. Like we are on that bus together. So, I think the more vulnerable we can be, that's what I was craving too, a little bit more. Not that in medicine you can't be vulnerable, because you can. There are absolutely phenomenal physicians out there doing that. But for me, it was just that I wanted to come out more and more from behind my white coat and just meet that mom where she was and have more of this, because this is who Anik is, at her core. And so just allowing that and saying, what if I love the question, how good are you willing to let your life get? And I think all moms, we can tap into that energy, because Amy, I can tell you every single time, for me, one of my favorite things was getting paged to deliveries. And usually pediatricians, we just get paged when there's the OB wants us there, or it's a C-section or something. So a lot of times we're not there because things are going well. And most of the time, obviously it goes well when we do go. But for me, every single time I stepped into that room, it was so transcending in the energy for me, getting that it was like sacred ground, like getting to watch a mom tap into her like inner superpower and bring forth that miracle, and that realization of her being like, I am powerful. I did this. I claim this. And you could just see her, I just loved it every single time. I was like, this is such an honor to see this mom, whether it was the first time or subsequent time that she was a mom, or even in other traditional different scenarios where it was an adoptive mom or something, but seeing her come into the office and just owning that role as a mom and that energy that comes along with it. I felt so attracted and aligned with that. And that's also where Mama Mindset came. And I was like, no, and so following that trail and knowing that this is who I am. And I get to live into that just like you're doing. And it is so fulfilling. And I love meeting other moms that are doing the same thing, and that we get to, support each other along all the moments, the raw and vulnerable ones, even more so. And that how fun that is, that we get to we get to be imperfect in process. And that's the whole thing. I think I really feel that in the postpartum period and all along, and again, I keep saying postpartum, but I really mean not just the 12 weeks, but the whole thing. Yeah. that permission to fall apart, to be imperfect, to find the humor in it, or find the camaraderie in some of the hurt, the pain, whatever it is healing. And that's where
Yes.
we need to meet each other, is in all of this, in
Yes.
process. So I love the way, the trajectory that you leaned into, because
Yes.
it's an ongoing journey. We will not have it all figured out. And the sooner we can release those limiting beliefs and stories that we should have it figured out, and all of the ways that hurts us and harms us, because we go into our own worlds, because we don't want to appear inadequate, or that we don't know what's going on, or that we're not teaching our kids right, or whatever it is.
Right.
Letting that go is just so powerful and important.
Yeah.
And
yeah. One of the things I want to touch on with vulnerability too, is what I found to be really interesting is a lot of times we think that we need to be vulnerable by sharing something that's happened to us, or talking about a story or whatever. But one of the best ways that you can be vulnerable is by asking another mom a question you don't know the answer to. And I'm like, I consider myself, I have to be really careful, because I come across almost as nosy, but it doesn't mean that I'm nosy. I have all the questions. I ask moms about their faith and how they came to be. You know, I have like, where do you go to church? Why do you go to that church? Was your background, did you grow up in this faith? You know, because I have friends that are all different beliefs, all different faiths. And I love it. And I ask them all the questions about it. And I'm not I shouldn't say that I'm not afraid, because I do get nervous sometimes on these touchy subjects, but I just come at it from a place of like, teach me, like, show me your perspective, because I want to know all of these perspectives. I don't want to live in a bubble. And we tend to, I mean, we're in very rural Idaho, so it's really easy for us to live in this very sheltered bubble, which is so amazing as a podcaster that I get the opportunity to learn more and ask these questions. But I think that is something that we forget about, is you don't have to go into the mom group necessarily sharing all of your shit. You could go into the mom group.
Point,
you can go in and ask questions like, hey, I'm struggling with this. How do you potty train? Or
I love that.
Even like, how do you discipline your children? Like, asking these questions, and you don't necessarily have to share if you're not comfortable in that moment, like your rock bottom or whatever in that situation. But it's okay to ask the question because by asking the question, that already sort of insinuates a level of vulnerability for sure, or a level 100%. Of like, I don't know this, that's why I'm asking. And so ask the questions, get to know people, you know, ask moms, like, I've never canned, you know, what's your best canning tip? Or the other day we meet on Thursdays. There's a group of homeschool moms that always meet, and we walk in the park. It's actually turned into like this half day adventure every Thursday, which I absolutely love. But when we were on the walk, we're like meal prepping, and also like just food management. Like, how do you manage your food storage? And so I was asking, because but there's a part of me that feels like I should know this. Like at 34, I feel like I should know this. And I'm a little bit afraid, like, how do you manage your pantry inventory? You know, like, do you keep like a checklist? But then I was like, it was so eye-opening for me. And I'm hesitant sometimes still, but I make myself do the brave thing, and I ask the questions.
I think that in that right there is everything. That's the crux of it, is the shoulding, that I should know this, because we all tell ourselves that I should know this.
Yes.
And that insecurity keeps us isolated. It does. I've definitely asked myself that question. And I'm sure most moms would admit to themselves, being honest to themselves, that they have too. And it's like our reptilian brain telling us, like that primitive part of our brain. I always like to get all neuroscience nerd on people, but it's telling us like, you're not safe to ask that question, because like, you know, we're not running from like lions and tigers anymore, but we still have that like fight or flight sense of like, it's not safe to ask that question. And because we don't want to appear inadequate. We don't want to appear like we don't have it all together, but you will find your tribe. And every time that you do lean into that, because you become kind of in a positive addiction to it once you start asking it, because you realize the ripples of it, how cool it is, and the feedback that you get, and that it actually doesn't matter who or what, or we're not in charge of how people respond to us. Right. And that's still something that I'm learning. I mean, to coach myself on, as in people are responsible for their emotional, you know, response to something, but asking a question, you're right, is a huge source of vulnerability, but also a huge source of opportunity.
Yes.
And it is these cool moments where you can say, I'm going to do it. So I agree with you. It doesn't have to be pouring out your life story. It can be, but it could also be a question. And I think a third source is also truly going into an interaction and holding space for another mom and asking her and being willing to stay in it, to listen and have that empathy and compassion. Like how is she doing, but really meaning it, and being there and as a sounding board for whatever may come, and I think sometimes we might be going through our own things. So we're not as comfortable to receive maybe the emotions of another person. But I want moms to know that we do have this amazing, obviously, ability inborn into our DNA to have compassion, to nurture. And when we apply that to ourselves and to other moms, how transformational that is. It impacts the world and ripples, like you were mentioning, that you may not even realize, but that is our superpower. And that is our healing modality for every single mom that we can do. And so going beyond the unfulfilling sort of small talk that isn't wrong, none of it's wrong, but I would say that it's not fulfilling for most moms to have those kind of conversations. And so we all are craving this vulnerability, especially today's world and the different things that we've all surfed in the climate of the past year, in different ways that have touched all of us, and we do have this opportunity with podcasts and these things that cross boundaries and cross borders. Moms are a global force, we can send out that energy to each other and hold space, whether we're in person or not. And so I think that there's some really cool ways to get vulnerable. And it's always when you give, as you've learned too, you receive so much more too than you ever would have anticipated or known.
Yes.
And this is what it means to be alive, is just having these interactions with people that are beyond the surface.
Yeah.
And I know that so many more moms are ready to have that. And I think it breaks down so much pathology for moms in the postpartum period and beyond, where that those feelings of isolation just don't serve them, and they are too much of a burden for any one person to carry.
Yeah.
So I think it starts with that vulnerability and someone just checking in and really believing that, really holding space for whatever it is that comes forth,
Yeah. And I want to expand. I keep saying that I want to expand, but I do want to expand on your third source suggestion too, or your idea, because I just had a conversation with a girlfriend yesterday, in fact, actually. So we call it the Fab Five, five of us girls that have been friends since early college. And we've somehow all been able to stay very, very close. And we all live in a very close proximity to each other. And she's fairly new to being home. She left her career also in HR. Actually, it's kind of an interesting story. She took kind of my job when I left, and she was there much longer. She tolerated it much longer than I did. And anyways, so she's loving it. She's thriving in this role. And she was sharing with me that, and we've talked about it, her and I have a couple of times, that there seems to be a sense of capacity that we have for friendships. And she was feeling like, I feel like I'm at pretty max capacity, like to invest in another relationship or invest in another friendship feels, she didn't really say impossible, but it felt like she wasn't capable of doing that. And so anyways, and I had that conversation about a week ago with her. And then yesterday when I chatted with her, she had actually come across another full-time mom who seemed like she was kind of struggling. And she had shared with my friend, just that she had told her this story. And my friend was like, oh my gosh, I could do better. Like not that she could do better. I shouldn't have said it in that way, but she said, I have the capacity that I could be intentional about it, and I could try, and I could, try and help her and talk her through these things, and sort of like, she didn't say mentor, but I'm just going to say mentor her in a sense. And so the reason why I wanted to expand on that is because if there's any mom listeners that are like, I don't have the entrepreneurial spirit right now, or I'm not going to start a podcast. So So what could you do as a mom who already feels like max capacity? Like, I don't feel like I
Yeah.
could have this conversation with the mom at the park because I can't even get my own stuff together, you know? Well, the thing is you don't have to heal everybody, you know,
Right.
especially if you aren't if you don't have that calling per se. But if there's one mom that you connect with, or you hear them struggling with something, like, not that you have to have a goal, but maybe you allow yourself to open up that energy to connect with one other mom in a
Yes.
deeper way. You don't have to connect with every single mom at the play date, but maybe there is one mom that you feel an energetic pull to, and that you can lean into connecting with her, or, you know, in my other friend situation, sort of mentoring and trying to expand that relationship in a way to create that ripple effect like we were talking about. Because if you can help her, she can help her children, and that continues on. But we're not asking, you
Mhm.
know, Anik, you and I aren't sitting here saying like, you need to open yourself up and be vulnerable to
Yeah.
all the moms at the play date.
No,
But
absolutely. We don't need
maybe
you to
there's
fillet open.
no, but maybe there is that one situation, that one moment that you could lean into, and then the power of allowing yourself to say, you know, I feel like I am at max capacity, but maybe I have a little bit in me. Like, maybe
Yeah.
I have a little bit of time. Maybe there's a little bit of energy. If there's something in you that clicks and says, I think this mom needs a little bit of help, try, like, lean into that and
Yeah. That
see,
intuition.
yes, and see the mom tuition, like you're talking
The
about,
mama
lean
tuition
into
is
that.
there. You know, you
Yes.
feel it. And sometimes we ignore those voices, and that's okay. It is not only okay, it's necessary to self-care is not selfish. It never is. And I'm big on
Right.
that. And I think that has been somewhere I've had to really land and preach to myself about.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes that mama tuition is leading you back to a place where you need to pour more into your love cup, learn your own love languages, and speak that over yourself. Put
Mhm.
boundaries up. Boundaries are sexy. They are, and they're
Mhm.
helpful. And so doing all that, but I know, and I know you see the power in mamas. I know that we can invite ourselves into this space where you can tell yourself as a mama, I'm safe. I'm safe within my own emotional box and my own neutrality.
Mhm.
We all have a place where we're neutral in our own heart. And when we really land there and come from that place, I believe we always have the compassion for other mom. You don't have to take on and feel and it all, I don't want to say burden because it's not, but what I'm saying is when a mom maybe is telling you her story or some kind of vulnerable
Mhm.
place, we have the capacity to listen. And that alone is healing. Just it's so validating
Yes.
just to meet them. And we have that ability. That is a superpower within us. So I think we get it confused sometimes as women because we have that nurturing sense in us, right? With our children and with who we are as humans.
Mhm.
But knowing that we're safe within our own, emotional container in our own bodies and our
Mhm.
own spirit, I think we have that capacity to be compassionate and offer empathy while still protecting our own energy, but meeting her wherever that is emotionally. And the more we learn to practice that art form and you
Mhm.
realize like you are okay, you can meet that mom and it doesn't have to take from your own personal energetic field, right? You
Right.
still have that to pour into your family and you. And that's an art form that takes a while. And it really is like a reverence toward yourself. And I'm still working on that, but it was something that I had to invite myself into because I've been in those moments where I've, watched mamas, give birth and all of that expansive energy and space and just majesticness of who she is.
Mhm.
And I've also, you know, held mama's hands as in codes where their child died. And I will forever have those moments cemented on my heart of her pain. So, there are heavy moments that we come to,
Mhm.
and it took me a long time to arrive at that. But I do think what you're saying is an invitation and we can all look at it like we can meet them there without taking from our own life force, I guess is what I'm saying,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
maybe if we are feeling that, when we're honest with ourselves, like your friend was, hey, I feel like I'm at max capacity. I think that's an invitation and an intuition to then pour back into ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, like
Yes.
self-care is not selfish. It's the most important thing you can do is to show up for yourself, like you've done for Mom in Process and like I'm doing. And I think so many moms, your listeners and moms across the world are doing that. Saying yes to yourself and investing in you is truly the most and profound thing you can do in your life for yourself and for your kids. If you want to,
Yes.
we need to feel like we're enhancing the maternal infant bond. And I know that the way to do that is by saying yes to yourself and pampering yourself, whatever way that needs to happen.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree 100%. My best days are when I've done my self-care routine in the morning and I'm fully prepared for life, whatever it throws at me. I know I accomplished all of my, to-dos, I guess, the things that fill me up. I don't want to call them to-dos, but the things that I love to do in the mornings. That's when I'm at my best. I'm ready for whatever curveballs are going to come my way.
It's
so
like Amy on fire, like she's ready. And I know for myself too, it's like, I'm the go person where, I used to like not stretch before I worked out. Cause I'm like, nope, I got this, or just wake up and go to like a 14-hour day and just crush it and do it. And I salute those former versions of myself, but that is definitely not a reverent way that I approach things anymore. And, kind of how they say, and it's true, like meditation, actually pausing, you're more productive because you've taken that pause. So whatever that pause looks like to each mom, everybody, we have our own ways that we need to be nourished. For me, it's like doing some yoga or journaling or, different things. But we know they're fun, and we usually kind of put them on the back burner, like a reward we dangle that we get when we do X, Y, Z, instead of something, we're like, oh, well, we can do that maybe when the day is done. Like for me, I used to put them, I like to say bookends of the day. Like, okay, well, if I get up really early before everyone's up, then I get to like, whatever, go on a walk on the beach, or after everybody's asleep and I've done all the things. And I think a lot of moms can resonate with this, but pushing that into the bookends of the day is like denying yourself all day, and nobody benefits from that.
Yes.
And so, not that I don't still fall into that pattern, but I'm more aware of it now. And just the recipe that for me works to nourish myself. And I'm still a work in process with that, but it's coming along.
I love that. So Anik, what is next? What are your goals for your business? I mean, you don't have to like go into your goals of your business, but what is next for you in this journey? I guess I'm excited to hear. I mean, it sounds like you're serving women so much and so well right now. And I'm so excited about that. And I want to just celebrate that for a second and congratulate you on just everything that you've come to learn and know and grow into. But what's your next step? Like you mentioned to me, a podcast. Is that going to happen?
Yes.
Do we get a little inside look at that?
Yes. So this is actually my first official podcast experience. So the serendipity is not lost on me. And I'm so grateful to you because I can feel, so hopefully the short answer is hopefully more of this. I next for Mama Mindset is the podcast and just sitting down, similar to you, my way forward, my currency forward is in vulnerability. So I plan on not having it scripted or really edited too much, just the natural flow. These life chats, these dialogues, I think they're gold. And I have some digital courses too that I'm gonna publish as well on Kajabi, which I think is a great platform if you're interested in the future of, there's a lot of them out there now, but we have this opportunity to kind of take our knowledge, and put it out there. So I have some courses on sleep, because I think, sleep as medicine is huge. And I want to do some in the future on the athlete. I mentioned like mamas are my favorite athletes. So everything I've learned postpartum about pelvic floor health and the things that I wished I knew, even, in the medical field that I didn't know. And so that, and then in the momatrician, I do want to do one in the future that's sort of centered on empowering the mama as the heel in her own home, and kind of from the medical side, what like maybe a pediatrician would love for moms to know, and just putting that confidence in her, so she's like, oh, I got this. You can kind of have it a little bit dispelled, like what's going to happen in the first year. And I really like the idea for me of just playing on the milestones of all what the babies go through, but turning them back on the mamas. Cause if you think about it, a baby, we see a baby like 12 times in the first year, and the mom with COVID and stuff, she might even just get like a video visit, like,
Yes. Right.
so things have really changed. And, that's not to no fault of like OBs. It's just kind of the current medical system, but
Right.
I want to come behind and do that. So there's some courses, and, on my blog, I continue to kind of write on mamamindset.com and just, kind of put out the vibes. So it looks similar to you. I had a business mindset when this first came out, and I had dates that I wanted to have things published. And I really felt this spiritual submission that needed to happen for me. That was this surrender of, actually, Anik, like, the higher power. And for me said, it's not going to look like how you thought it was going to look. And so, yeah, the timeline of everything I've really surrendered to. And I know now it was for the better, because it's from a much more freeing and liberating and artistic place that these things will come forward and hopefully serve moms. So I really, my mission is just empowering and believing in moms, and building upon this, using a podcast as another wonderful portal to have these life chats and serve whoever path I'm meant to cross. That's really where I see Mama Mindset going.
I love that. I'm so excited for you. I cannot even articulate how excited for you I am to just, and it's very inspiring for me, because I do tend to have that timeline and productivity, and I need to, push. And honestly, there's so many masculine based entrepreneurial books out there that it's like push, 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 and go, 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 and do. And I've had interviews with some incredible women who have really leaned into their divine femininity and the difference between that. And that's like, was at the time like so foreign to me. And it's something that I'm always like keeping in the back of my mind, like, okay, how do I lean into like the essence of myself and push out this other narrative that I've come to know and have been sort of indoctrinated into from when I was younger, and then business school and everything. And it's like, I think if we could, learn a little more from you in that standpoint, like it's just very inspiring for me to remember
and yours
that
is too. Your story is too, because I love that. I also, we both, we're products of the system and learn to thrive, and do well in our various careers, but always knew that the feminine energy in us, and the way that we know we have an intuition about the way that we want to bring forth and bring life into our, I even hesitate to say business ventures, because I think they're more of just visionary ideas. And I think that business maybe labels them in a way that has a ceiling upon it, which yours has we have no ceiling upon the way that we plan to do things. And the more we lean into that feminine energy, which is, it is that energy when a mom pushes out her baby, or she holds her baby for the first time, that supernatural sense of that you were created to do this, to nurture life. And with that energy, what could you do creatively as a visionary is there is no limit.
Yeah.
And so that is what you're tapping into, and me too. And, I've been writing children's books because I love reading to my babies. So I'm hoping to release some children's books into the wild. So it's fun to admit these things that I've kind of like kept here close for so long, but in the spirit of vulnerability, just saying, may they find their way out to whoever is meant to,
I'm so excited about that, because we're huge proponents of children's books in our household. And I've had other incredible women on too. Megan Alexander actually wrote a children's book, and it's called One More Hug. And it made me cry. And I reached out to her. She's an actress. And I mean, she has personal security, right? And I was like, can you come on my podcast?
I love that.
She was so amazing. And she wrote a children's book. And so when that comes to fruition for you, because I know you'll create something incredible, like we'll have you back on and we'll talk about it and we'll share the story. And, so I'm just really excited for you. And I really resonate with, three things that you said, which is a shift from like the business. I'm with you. Like, I don't really like to call it a business, because business insinuates just like only monetary gain. And there's so much more that like happens within this creative space for me. But you talked about being a visionary, you talked about being a creator, and you talked about being a healer. And all three of those things to me, like when you call something a business, it's like, it just, it just feels wrong. But like healer, creator, those terms for me, I'm like, if I had to label it, if I had to label it something, like those are things that I'm finally embracing. And it sounds like you are too. And like accepting, like, I am a healer, I'm a visionary, and I'm
Yes.
a creator. And,
Yes.
and that's incredible for me. And it sounds like that's very transformational for you too. So I'm so excited, Anik, where you're going to take this journey and where you're going to take Mama Mindset. And I'm so happy that Mama Mindset brought us together
I
and
love it.
we've
I feel
had
like
this.
we're running around at like a mama Olympic track and like, just like with the baton, and
Yes.
it's all like we're in it together. And I love
Yes.
that. And so I also felt that, because I had emailed back my friend, the attorney, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be on the podcast. And I just, decided never to let any of the, I was like, no, I feel this energy. I know that I believe it. I lean into it. And I know you did too. And we both, so I think similar to what you're saying about business. Yeah, we get to do this. It's fun. And so I hope all the mamas that, whose ears this conversation, life chat lands upon, that, we believe in you too. And thank you for, giving us your time in this. Cause I think time is the most valuable gift we have. And
Yes.
that, we're all visionaries, and really you get to create the life you want to live now, just like you're doing. And it's been so inspiring hearing and seeing the mom in process and the mama mindset in you, and how your journey's going. And from my little corner here in Maui to yours in rural Idaho, that we get to sit here on a Sunday night and have this life-giving, soul-filling chat.
Yes. Yes. I hope that the time, I love that you mentioned that, because I hope that this time that Mama spent with us was valuable and entertaining and just gave life and energy into all of them. And so I hope maybe next time I chat with you, maybe we can come to Hawaii.
Yes. Aloha. You are always welcome. We can frolic on the beach, and we can
Kids would love
definitely,
it.
yes. And we're all about the snow too, like I was telling you recently. So I think we all live in these majestic corners of creation, and
Yes.
putting more nature into our lives. We all need that too. I know I felt that literally I would ask people like, what's the weather, when I would be in the hospital all day, and they'd be like, it's raining. And I just wanted to go outside and just feel the rain. Cause we're all meant to be connected with nature and,
Yes.
and the creation around us. So yeah, could keep going, cause this is super fun. But I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And I feel your aloha from Idaho and from all of the mamas that you serve. And thank you for letting me come and get to know them as well.
Absolutely. I was honored to have you on. I was so happy that you said yes to my goofy invitation email where it's like, hey, by the way,
oh, I
could you come
was
on
so
the
excited, and
podcast?
sorry, by the way, like, cause it got buried in a Facebook that I was just like, oh my God, I was so excited when I saw it. I told my husband that I like immediately emailed back, and then didn't know if it landed in your box, but I know you were traveling. So I was like, oh yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, of
Yeah. It
course,
was so fun.
I love that we both trusted. I think it was a trust. We just trusted the energy that we knew could be there. And this is an example of, two mamas leaning into their vulnerability and spreading that love. So
I love it. Anik, will you let everybody know where they can find you? And I'll also make sure to put it all in the show notes below too.
Oh, great. Yeah, for sure. You can find me at www.mamamindset.com. And from there, I have a weekly waves, which, to be honest, it hasn't been exactly every week in full vulnerability, but I do right there in my courses. When you plug in there, you'll get updates on like when the digital courses come out. And I have some different things like affirmations that they can download, because I'm big on speaking life and love over yourself. And it's just a place in a space where I hope is affirming and a Zen space. And that's what I want. So that's the best place to find me for now. And you'll find all the links to all the various podcasts and things that will hopefully be created from there.
That's awesome. Great. I will put all of that in the show notes so nobody has to go back and listen to all of it again. But if you want to, you can. So Anik, thank you so much for coming on today, sweet mama. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I hope to have you back on again soon.
Thank you, Amy. Aloha.
All right. Bye. Hey, sweet mama. Thank you so much for joining Anik and I in this conversation today. I had an absolute blast with her. I think you could just feel us vibing and the energy that was spread. I hope that the energy that we created and the energy that we shared today is able to find its way into your soul, find its way into your heart space, and give you the energy and the inspiration to go forth into your day and just embrace who you are. Because Anik's story was so inspiring for me. And it was fascinating to me as we dove into this conversation, how paralleled our journeys have been. And to be completely honest with you, there was a conversation that happened before we started recording and a conversation that happened after we started recording or after we ended the recording. And the more we dove into getting to know each other, the more we realized our journeys, it was literally meant to be that we crossed paths. It was literally meant to be that we came to have this conversation to share with you. And at some point, I would love to have her back on the show. I would love to dive deeper into some of these conversations around motherhood and mindset, and some of the postpartum mindset as well. And just that journey that like she mentioned isn't just the 12-week postpartum journey. It's a never ending journey. I don't want to say never ending, like it's like scary and daunting, but it's forever this journey that we will be going through, which is very similar to the idea and the concept of mom in process. Is we're always shifting and we're always growing and changing. And so if you found value in this conversation with Anik as much as I did, which was incredible, please don't hesitate to reach out to her. I will put all of her contact information in the show notes below. And as always, if you like the show, if the show made you think, if it made you laugh, if it made you smile, if it made you feel any kind of positive emotion at all, please take a minute and leave me a rating review on iTunes. That really helps expand this community and help another mom, which goes into, creating that ripple effect like we've talked about, not only in this episode, but in other episodes as well. So I always appreciate you. I'm so grateful that you took the time to spend a little bit of it with me. And as you go forth into the rest of your week, please know that I think you're doing an incredible job. All of you mamas out there are doing this incredible work that I know is sometimes seems incredibly overwhelming and challenging, to the fact that we don't feel like we can succeed in this. But I want you to know that your efforts, your intentionality behind it, your passion for it, you are doing a great job, even when you think that you aren't. The fact that you're trying is absolutely amazing. So as always, thank you so much for listening today. I look forward to talking to you all again very soon.